Yes, sir.
Alright. I sent you some deployment related scripts. Did you able to see?
Yes, yes, yes.
Already I sent some sample applications also. Right. All right. So today we will see JDBC, how you are going to be configuring the Java database connectivity, and as well as JMS, how you are going to be communicate. These two topics you will able to see. Okay. So what is the JDBC and why we occur JDBC? Let's see. So JDBC, Java Database Connectivity. Generally, JDBC is nothing but standard Java API. So JDBC, which is used to access it is a standard Java API. By using that, which we can able to access to the heterogeneous database, right? Heterogeneous means different databases. By using that API, we can able to access the different databases. And it is not a platform dependent; it is platform independent access to the database. So JDBC generally which supports both two-tier and as well as the multi-tier models for accessing the database. That is what JDBC. JDBC is nothing but it is a standard Java API. By using that, you can able to access the heterogeneous databases, and it is not a depend on the platform actually, which is independent of the platform access to the database. And it support for both two-tier and as well as the hello, hello. Any doubt? Any doubt? Can I continue? Right. So JDBC is nothing but standard Java API. By using that, what we can able to see, we can able to access to the heterogeneous databases. Those database access, it is not depend on the platform. It is platform independent access to the database. So generally JDBC which supports the two-tier architecture and as well as the multi-tier models for accessing the database. So let's we see what is the database architecture actually. See, this is called JDBC architecture generally. In the JDBC architecture, JDBC is a separate concept and application is a separate concept. In the sense database is a different one and JDBC is a different one. Whenever application wants to connect, whenever application wants to create the database connections, that time what will happen? So client able to raise the request, that request which is forwarded through the Java applications, and Java application generally what it has going to be doing through the drivers, it has going to be creating the database connections. See, Java application is a different one and database is a different one. Cannot able to create the database connections directly, which requires the database connections. So in between to act like as interface or interpreter. So what are the drivers actually? Drivers are nothing but providing the interfaces in between the client and as well as data type. Otherwise, it has providing it has going to be sits in between the client type and as well as data type. It has going to be interprets the whatever the client is going to be requesting, interprets into the database understandable language using the drivers. So there are following types of drivers which are available here: type 1 driver, type 2 driver, type 3 and type 4 drivers. Total here we have the 4 drivers. So what is the type 1 driver and what is the type 2 driver and the type 3 driver? So let's we see what is the type 1, type 2, type 3 drivers generally. So when we will use those drivers and which driver we need to be choose while you are configuring the JDBC or database connections. So let's see about the type 1 driver generally. Type 1 driver, in other words, you can call it as JDBC ODBC bridge driver. In other words, open database connectivity. And generally what will happen, these type 1 drivers which runs only in a Windows environment cannot run in a in Linux environment. So generally which requires ODBC drivers should be installed on each client machine. These ODBC drivers which we need to be installed on each client machine. So that is about the type 1 driver and which returns in the C language actually. See all the client calls which are going to be converted into the JDBC ODBC bridge call and enabling the database connection. So, but what are the disadvantages in this? Which runs only on Windows and these ODBC bridges which we need to be installed on each client machine. So there is a problem actually. Due to that, they were revealed, and again it's a performance issue. And due to that, they were came with the solution called Type 2 drivers or thick drivers. Whenever you have the more burden on the client, so we can call it as a thick drivers. And generally what will happen, type 2 drivers or thick drivers are native drivers. See, these drivers, see, whenever you are installing the database, example, if you take the Oracle, if you are installing in the Windows, database vendor generally which is going to be providing the, the drivers regarding the Windows, which is provided by the database specific vendor. If you are installing the Linux related drivers which are going to be providing. So which requires the in type 2 driver generally, which requires the native drivers so to be installed on the client machine, each client machine. Right? All the JDBC calls which are going to be converted into the native API calls of the database. Generally, that is called native API drivers call, native API calls of the database, which returns partially in the Java, not written in the fully not fully written in the Java, partially which returns. See, which was improved the performance, then comparing with the type 1, and even it is going to be, uh, somewhat it is reliable, but it may have its own disadvantages. It's a thick client and it cannot able to, it's a database connection is very expensive in the type 2 driver. And that is the reason they came with the solution called type 3 driver. So whenever the type 3 drivers came out into the market, first time middleware came out into the market. Instead of installing on the client side or instead of installing the server side, they are going to be installing separate host called middleware in the network server. All the drivers which are going to be installed over there in the network server. And what are the advantages actually by using the network, by using the specific database protocols which are going to be accessing to the database. Generally, what it has going to be, do that configuring the, drivers in the middle tier or middle layer. You can research the connection pool according to the application requirement, and you can do the load management, and also you can able to catching. All these which are going to be improve the performance while you are defining the type 3 driver. And what is the disadvantage here also? Again, you are defining or configuring the drivers in the type in the middleware actually. So that's the reason what will happen. Type 4 drivers came out into the market, so which are all called thin drivers. In other words, pure Java drivers. No need to install either it may be a client side or middle side, or client side or server side. We just add the jar files to the server sleep directory, and you can use the, or you can, while you are configuring that, you can choose the type 4 drivers. Most of the cases in the real time we will go with the 90% type 4 drivers only, and remaining 10% which we may have the type 2 drivers. So we will decide what drivers we need to be used while you are configuring the data sources, which is defined by the developer or business architect. So most of the case, according to its capabilities, a type 2 or type 4 drivers which will use in the real time. So this is about the drivers. So directly cannot able to communicate. In between which requires some interpreters, those are all called drivers. Generally, this JDBC which is going to be supports the transactions also. This JDBC which is going to be support the transactions also. What is a transaction generally? A transaction is nothing but a mechanism. So generally it handles a group of operations in the sense, some set of operations, though it is look like single only. Example, if you go to the ATM, you can withdraw amount, you can transfer the amount, you can do whatever you want, but it looks like single transaction only. Every transaction, so which follows the ACID properties. What is atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. Every transaction it follows the set of properties known as ACID. So generally, first atomicity. See, generally, any transaction which done or undone completely in the event of failure, so that is called all the operations and processes are undone. In the sense, if it is completed, it is going to be, completes the transaction. If it is not completed, undone completely. In the sense, so from inconsistent state to the data rollbacks into its previous consistent state. That is called atomicity. And consistency means a transaction generally transforms a system from one consistent state to another consistent state. In the sense, you want to transfer amount, you are in a consistent state, from consistent state to another consistent state. And isolation, generally each transaction which occurs independently of the another transaction. There is no dependent on one transaction and another transaction at the same time, which can happen, but there is no dependency on one transaction and another transaction. Next, durability. If transaction is completed successfully, which remains the permanent and commits those that transaction. If it is failed, that entire transaction is going to be brings to the previous working state or previous consistent state. So that is called, durability. Every transaction which follows all these ACID properties. Let's we see how you can able to manage the transaction. Generally, the transaction management will do like this. This is called Weblogic server. This is application 1 and application 2. See, every operation in the sense one transaction which we can able to manage by the one resource manager. And so all the resource manager which is managed by the transaction manager. These transactions which we can able to configure and manage by using the Java transaction API. End-to-end transaction configuration which we can able to manage by using the Java transaction API. Let us take some example regarding the successful transferring and successful transferring. Let's we see, first I will able to take successful transaction. This is account 1, this is account 2. Whenever I want to transfer some amount from account 1 to account 2. So what I need to do to commit the changes if I do successfully. So in step 1 generally it is going to be withdraw the amount from the account 1 and depositing amount in the account 2. And in steps what it will do, it has going to be checks about in step 1 was successful completed or not. If step 1 successfully completed, it means transfer successfully. In the step 2 the transaction is going to be completed successfully. So this is the successful transaction. What is unsuccessful transaction? If it is going to be deposit the amount from that account, but while it is depositing on the account too, it may have some problems or some technical problems. So by that it is unable to deposit on the account too. In the sense, in step 1 the transaction was uncompleted. So in step 2 what will happen? It is going to be checks about the step 1. If it is not completed, generally that entire transaction is going to be rolled back and brings to the previous consistent state. That is about the successful and unsuccessful transaction. If problem occurs while transferring the transaction, then that entire transaction is going to be brings to the previous consistent state. That is called unsuccessful transfer. So then after that, what are the types of transactions here which we have actually? There are two types of transactions important in interview question. So first one, local transaction or non-extended architecture. Non-XA architecture. In the sense, it deals with the single resource manager to complete the transaction. So that is called local transaction or non-XA transaction. Global or 2PC, two-phase commit protocol. Two-phase commit protocol or distributed transaction or XA transaction. So all we can call it as same only. Global transaction, two-phase commit protocol or distributed transaction, XA transaction. Definition which remains the same. So generally what it is, which deals with the more than one resource manager, to complete the transaction. So such kind of transactions we can call it as two-phase commit protocol or global transaction or distributed transaction or XA transaction. This is about the XA, non-XA transactions. Two types of transactions, local and as well as non-local, local and as well as global transactions. This is about the transaction types. So let's we discuss about that, how you can able to what is a global two-phase commit protocol generally. Two-phase commit protocol means, so any global transaction we can call it as two-phase commit protocol. The process is going to be complete in a two steps. Phase 1 generally what will happen, resource manager 1 which asks to make or to prepare the changes, and in phase 2 if resource manager 1 was written ready to commit phase, otherwise it checks about the phase 1. If phase 1 was successful, then it is going to be commit the data in phase 2, else it rollbacks entire data into the previous consistent state. So in the global transaction, so what is the global transaction ID? In other words, XID. Very, very important entry question. In global transaction, by using this XID or XID which enables is used to track all the changes associated with the distributed transaction or global transaction or XA or two-phase commit protocol. all the changes which is associated with the global transaction ID. This is about the transaction types. Let's we see example of the transaction two-phase commit protocol. This is what successful commit actually. So other interview question, all the log files regarding the transactions which are going to be stored under the .t logs, transaction logs. And see in phase 1, phase 2. In phase 1 what will happen? So it is ready for commit, and phase 2 it has going to be commit successfully. In the sense changes are made permanently. In phase 1 which is not ready, in the sense phase 1 was failed. In phase 2 which are going to be aborted and brings to the you know previous consistent state. That is called unsuccessful two-phase commit protocol. So how you can able to configure the transactions generally? You can configure and implement the transaction in the WebLogic server by using the JTA. You can create unique transaction identifier, and you can do the following supporting configurations, and as well as all these we can able to do. Let's go to over there how we can able to configure according to the requirement regarding the transactions. So I'm just entering the username. So click on the services. So go down JTA, Java Transaction API. See all these properties, transaction timeouts, transaction timeout seconds. In the sense, whenever the transaction is going to be timeout, that time you need to be connection timeout. You have to be increase that one. And these are all the parameters which we can able to edit according to the requirement, both in normal and as well as click on the advanced. If you want, you can select the SSL while you are exchanging the information in between the two transactions securely, safely. You can able to do that part by enabling the SSL and click on save button. In this way you can able to transactions are going to be configured in the WebLogic server. Once we complete the transactions, again which is coming into that JDBC generally, Java database connectivity. In the sense, in WebLogic server generally, JDBC is nothing but data source. JDBC is nothing but data source. So what is the data source and why we are going to be configuring the data source and what are the types of data source which are available. So let's we see what is a data source generally. A data source is nothing but it is the object, so which are going to be which is going to be providing the way for JDBC client, to obtain the database connections from the connection pool. Generally, a data source which are going to be stored in the JNDA tree, and it can support the transactions. Just now we have seen, and it is associated with the connection pool. So where you are getting the and how you are getting the connection generally through the data source from the connection pool. So what are the types of data source which are available generally? There are three types of data source which are available. Very, very important interview question. So this grid link data source which is going to be available after 10.3.5 onwards, before does not have. There are three types of data source which are available: generic data source and grid link data source and multi data source. Normally we can create generic data source only. Generally it contains the ready-made connection pool of databases that are created when the data source instance is created. Normally we can create the generic data source only. See, whenever do you have the backend in the backend Oracle database, that time you just go with the Oracle grid link data source. So whenever you have the backend Oracle database, that time you will go with the grid link data source. Otherwise, you will go with the generic only. Right. So that time what it is going to be doing, whenever you select that grid link data source as a data source, it is going to be providing the following additional features: fast connection failure, and as well as runtime connection load balancing, and gracefully handling for the connection problems or network issues, and XA affinity, providing the security by using the SSL, and also additionally Oracle wallet. So all these are additionally which is provided while configuring the grid link data source, but which is possible whenever do you have the backend Oracle database. The final one, multi data source. So generally by using this we can able to handle the failovers and load balancing in the data sources. Let's we see what is the architecture of the data source here. So before that we'll able to see JDBC terminology. Data source, I told you, it contains the connection information about that name of the database, name of the username, and name of the host name and name of the port number, and as well as the database name. All those and the type of a driver, all those you can call it as data source which contains that information. Connection pool means a ready-made connection pools or bunch of connection objects which we can call it as connection pool. A pool of ready-made database connections or bunch of connection objects we can call it as connection pool. Connection object is nothing but what you know. So by it holds the connection details actually. The connection object which required by application to establish the connection to the database. In the sense is the connection object which contains all connection related details. Let's we see what is the what is the advantage connection pools which are going to be created in the middleware. Generally there is a lot of advantages actually for to create the connection pools in the middleware. The first one, a time and overhead it is going to be consuming, and second point, connections information is going to be monitored at the central location called administration console, and the number of database connections whenever the application required you can resize according to the requirement without asking the database administrator. And a connection pool allows application to borrow if the database connections default database connections are not enough. So by using these advantages, these reasons, we are going to be configuring the connection pools under the middleware. Let's we see what is the flow of the connection request whenever you are going to be accessing the data source. So whenever the application whenever application wants to create the database connection, which is going to be lookups in the JND tree, which is going to be provides the data source generally which is associated with the connection pool which gives the connection object which contains the connection properties, which are going to be speak with the, or which is going to be talk with the JDBC drivers and as well as the database and establish the connection if properties whatever you provided proper. See, this is what actually architecture of the data source. This is what application 1, and see data source 1, data source 2, data source 3. All these data sources are standalone data source. Each data source which may contains the one connection pool. Inside a connection pool, you may have the n number of connection objects. So these are all the standalone data sources. Whenever the clients wants to raise a request to get the database connections, which is going to be go to the JND tree, and the JND tree is going to be look up the data sources. Data source which provides the JDBC connections, connection pool which gives the connection object which contains the database connection details. In real time, those database connection details which will give by the database administrator. It is going to be checks about that database connection properties, whatever you provided, whether it is proper or not. Once it is checked, generally it is going to be establishing the connection application to database. Then other interview question: how the connection flow or internal connection flow happen in the JDBC? This is what client, whenever he wants to create the data source, and it is going to look up in the JND tree which returns the data source, generally data source which associated with the connection pool which returns the connection object, and connection is going to be created between the application and as well as the data source in this way. Then after that, how you are going to be configuring the data sources. See, the default database for 10G. This is only for testing purpose. In production, we'll use the production databases. So default database for 10G, point base, and port number, default port number 9092. So default port number for 11G database, Derby database, and default port number is 1527. See, generally in the real time, what will happen? You always tell you configure the Oracle database only. No need to tell these sample databases or default databases. In place of this, you can able to configure the new database only, Oracle database only, or any other database. Let's we see how you can able to configure the data source actually. Details it needs to be asked at the time of runtime. So we need to be start the default database actually. We are going to be configuring the data sources now. For that, we need to be start the data source /home start derby.sh. See which is started, and it will throw some exception. So the server is running. Connections are going to be listen on 1527. Next, go to the admin console. Expand the services node. So click on the services node. Click on the data sources. I told you, right, three type of data sources: generic data source, grid link data source, and multi data source. Click on the generic data source. Provide the data source name and the JNDA name. Based on this only, it is going to be look up at the runtime. And select the Oracle type. So by default in the production we'll able to select the Oracle only. But for time being here we can able to select the Derby database. These are all the database which is supported by the Weblogic server. Click on next. Select the type 4 drivers. Click on next. Click on next. You have to be provided the database connection properties. All these details which will give in real time database administrator. Database username generally Derby. This is what default. Host name localhost and port number 1527. And the database username also Derby and password also Derby and confirm also Derby. So click on next and see whatever the details which are provided by using this table, it is going to be tested in the database. For that, which we can able to click on the test configuration. So generally it tests the database availability and the connection properties which you provided actually in the previous step. And the moment you click on the test configuration, if it does not provide any errors, generally it is going to create the database connection. So which means test connection success you'll able to get. If you have any problem, it throws exception here only. And click on next and select the target and click on finish button. Like that, you can create how many data sources you want, you can create. Click on next, click on next, click on next, provide these details. There be. This time I'm giving some wrong details actually for getting for knowing your purpose. Click on next and click on test configuration. See what it has given telling connection test failed in the sense it cannot create the connection. It throws because whatever the details which provided it is not proper. It's are wrong actually. So click on next and click on test configuration. See connection test succeed and click on next. Select the target and click on finish button. In this way, how many data sources you want, you can create it. This is where you can able to configure and connection pools you cannot able to configure. Whenever you create the data source, automatically inside you may have the connection pools also. Connection pool. See, these are all the connection pool. Initial capacity. Whenever you application request, how many connections it has going to be created. The number of physical connections to create when the creating the connection pool, in the data source. These are the maximum default connections which are going to be, the maximum default of the physical connections that the connection pool can contain. And this is minimum capacity. Each time how much it is going to be increased? One connection pool. See the default JDBC connections in development mode 15 and production mode 25. So you can able to configure whenever it required according to the requirement. You can able to change those connection properties, right? So in this way you can able to configure the even connection pool also. So what my requirement is here, so whenever the data source is going to be failed, so my requirement is what happen whenever the data source is going to be fails. Okay, what happen whenever the data source is going to be fails. Example, in the cluster, if any one of the server is going to be fails, so what I did actually, so generally I'll configure the cluster, and in the cluster it is going to be redirecting to the other server instance which is running in the cluster. But coming to the data source, similarly in the data source also, why the data source is going to be corrupted or fail? It can be because of the various reasons. Generally, the number of connections which are overloaded, there is a reason one, and the connection pool objects are going to be corrupted. Reason two, reason three, database, connection properties which is changed by the database administrator and is not updated with us. There is a third reason. Those are the reasons data source cannot able to return the usable connection object. So generally earlier without WebLogic, it has going to be handling by the application only. But after in the WebLogic, instead of handling the web application, so generally WebLogic tries to solve the problems. So tries to solve the problem using the data source level clustering. In the sense by using the multi data source. Let's we see how it is going to be doing. This is what two data sources, data source 1 and data source 2. Data source 1 which returns to the usable connection object, unusable connection object, in the sense which fails to return the connection object. See, application immediately which needs to look up another data source is available or not, which is not available because these two are the independent data sources, cannot able to redirect the request. So that's why it is going to be get the error to the client actually. See, this is about the existing problem which we overcome by using the JDBC level clustering, in the sense to implement the multi-data source. What is a multi-data source? Generally, it enables the abstraction around a group of data sources that provides load balancing and failover in between the data sources. That is about the multi-data source. Let's we see how you can able to load balance. Generally, load balance can be done either it may be a round robin or random fashion. And generally, let's we see what is the architecture of the multi-data source. Generally, in the data source, which we may have the data source 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, all the data source which are independent actually. There is no connection or there is no interaction in between those data sources. But whereas in multi-data source, you can create the multi-data source. You can add all the data sources into the multi-data source, right? So in the sense, instead of this time application look up the normal data source, it is going to be look up the multi-data source. Generally, multi-data source which is going to be provides the ordered list of data sources. Each data source which contains the connection pool. If any one of the data source unable to return the usable connection, so generally it is redirecting to the another application, another data source, and another data source which enables the connection pool and configuring the connection. So in this way, we are going to be producing the solution to the failover and as well as the load balancing in the JDBC level. Let's we see generally these two data sources which are in a multi-data source. So whenever the application looks up about the JDBC connections in the multi-data source, it does not provide actually return the usable connection object in the sense which fails. So immediately which are going to be redirecting or fail over to the second data source which are available in the multi-data source and continuing the process. End user cannot able to get the any error. That is about how you are going to be overcome the failover and as well as the load balancing. How you can implement or achieve the failover in the WebLogic server JDBC by using some ordered list of data sources, and it cannot provide connection. Generally, the multi-data source which fail out to the next data source in the multi-data source. In this way, it can able to handle the or achieve the failover or achieved. Right, let's we see how the load balancing is going to be happen. See, these two servers are busy, so it cannot able to process the request. So generally, what will happen? It is going to be keeps in the queue, and whenever the data sources are going to be get free, it is going to be forwarding those data sources or data connections. So for enabling the database connections, sorry, for handling the load balancing like this. So in this way, you can able to handle the load balancing and failover in the JDBC level. Let's we see. So generally, load balancing can be done in a round robin fashion, and the multi-data source chooses the next data source. Generally, if the data source is going to be unable to return the connection object. And failover generally, while you are configuring the multi-data source, you can choose. There was two algorithms which are available: failover and as well as the load balancing. If you choose the failover, automatically which can implement the both load balancing and as well as the failover mechanism. This is about how you are going to be configuring the or explaining theory about the multi-data source. Let's see how we can able to configure. I click on the data source. I click on multi-data source. I'm just creating WLS demo or MDS multi-data source. Copy JD slash. By using this name, it is going to be lookup at runtime. Algorithm type you have to be choose either it may be failover or load balancing. So I'm choosing the failover. click on next and select the target and click on next and click on next. See here which are available, one data source which is available and other one is chosen, and click on next and click on finish button. See which I created the multi data source for failover. Similarly, depends on the requirement, you can create for the load balancing also. This time you have to choose the load balancing. Click on next, select the target and click on next and click on next. You have to choose the servers from available to chosen and click on finish button. So in this way you can able to configure the multi data source. See, then after that, so in this way you can able to provide the failover in the JDBC. Then after that, other concept here we may have what is the foreign JNDA provider configuration. So foreign JNDA provider configuration, generally it has going to be represents the JNDA tree that is not part of the current domain. Even though the WebLogic server JNDI that is not part of the current domain, which is outside of the current domain, still you can able to access like a foreign JNDI provider by configuring the foreign JNDA provider. Let's see how you can able to configure. Go to over there, expand the services node, or click on the foreign JNDI provider, click on new, provide the name, click on next, select the target and click on finish button. In this way you can able to configure the foreign JNDA provider, because you can enable the database connections or create the database connections. The JNDI which is not part of the current domain, JNDI structure which is outside of the current domain, which is nothing but what even though you can able to create the database connections. That is about the foreign JNDI provider. Let's see how you can able to monitor the data source and as well as administrate whenever the connections are not working properly. So let's see those are all how you can able to do it that part. Go to over there, click on the data sources, click on monitoring. See here it is going to be, click on data sources, select this, click on this data source. Like this you can able to monitor the multi data source. For monitoring the data sources, click on this data source. These are all targets. What are the targets did you set for that multi data source? Sorry, normal data source. And monitoring means you can monitor about the data sources, and control means you can test and as well as you can string and as well as you can clear the statement cache and the database connection, suspend, resume, shutdown and start. All you can able to do from this control. And security, you can provide the security for this only JDBC connections, and you can write some notes regarding the database connections, and connection pool for configuring the connection pools. Transaction, generally it may contain about the transaction related information like one way two-phase commit protocol, one commit protocol and LLR and all those. Diagnostics means you can monitor about the if they have any problem you can able to monitor from the diagnostics. So this is about monitoring about the data sources. So in this way you can able to configure the JDBC connections for the applications in real time. No need to tell about the Derby database. In place of Derby database you can select the Oracle, and database default database name is XE, and local host name is localhost, and port number 1521, and username whatever you can create, example HR. This is what default user actually. In this way you can able to configure regarding the Oracle database. So this is about how you are going to be configuring the JDBC connections. Clear? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
So in the
Hello?
sense how you are
Yes,
going
sir.
to be configuring the data source connections. So then after that
Okay.
other important concept called Java JMS. Okay.
Yes, okay.
What is JMS generally? Java Messaging Service. Let us I take some example. See, you're using some mobile, okay? That is also an application, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing, assume like that you get a job some MNC company. You are already getting job some MNC company. You want to every day you are going to that office, okay? The moment
Okay.
you are logged into the office, you are going to be switched off your mobiles, right?
Yes, sir.
So generally, during the day, what are the messages will come to your mobile, how you can come to know, and where it is going to be stored till that point, the moment you switch on. No idea, right? So
Yes.
generally, those messages which are going to be stored under this JMS only. In the sense, whenever the application is available, generally those messages which are going to be delivered successfully and gets the acknowledgement. That is called
Okay.
synchronous and it's asynchronous. JMS generally, which is a standard Java API. By using this, we can able to exchange the information in between the two or more enterprise messaging products. Understood? In between
Okay.
two or more enterprise messaging products. Let's we see generally which falls under the JMS, which falls under the MOM, message oriented middleware. It refers to an infrastructure that supports the messaging. Generally, this MOM which defines message structure and as well as how you are going to be defining the elements in the message, the way you are sending and receiving the messages. That is possible by using the MOM only. Even MOM under the MOM you can able to get JMS. Okay. So Java message service generally it has going to be enables the application to communicate with one enterprise application to another enterprise application by exchanging the messages. Let let us I'm telling about something. So so that is about exchanging the messages, right? In other words, it is a standard API for accessing the enterprise messaging system, especially JMS. So what is the message? Generally, it is going to be exchanging the messages. Message is nothing but it is a request or report or event, and it contains the information which is needed to communicate, enterprise application or two different applications. Either it may be any information, meaningful information which communicates, you know, two enterprise applications or two different applications. So generally, whenever you are interacting with two or more systems to exchanging the, messages, so decouple all the dependencies actually. There are two types of communications which are available in the JMS: synchronous communication and asynchronous communication. See, let us take some example. Synchronous communication means, see, I'm telling something to you people, and you are telling immediately. See, I'm telling hi, you are telling hi immediately. In the sense, both systems need to be present at the same time to complete the communication. Such kind of communications we can call it as synchronous communication. In other words, request response communication. You are requesting the request, immediately you will get the response. In the sense, after requesting the request, you are waiting for the response. Such kind of communications we can call it as synchronous communication. So what are the asynchronous communications generally? Asynchronous communications means when both systems need not to be present at the same time to complete the transaction. In the sense, your application is not available, you are not in a online, you are in a offline. That time what I'm doing. So today you don't have any class, like that I send message. You may respond or you may not respond. After seeing some time, you may respond according to the severity. That is called asynchronous communication. Your application is does not available. Generally, those messages will store in the JMS only. Whenever your application is available, it's forward those messages to that application and get the acknowledgement from that application. This is called asynchronous communication. Even though application is active or inactive, messages are going to be delivered properly by using the asynchronous communication. Understood? Synchronous? Asynchronous? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Synchronous means you are requesting the request and getting the response immediately. Asynchronous means you cannot get the you just raise the request, no need to be wait for the response. When you will get the
Mhm.
response, you don't know. There is no server, there is no time, right? Application is available, unavailable, we don't know. That is about
Okay.
the asynchronous communication. So generally, let's we see what is the purpose of the JMS generally. The purpose of JMS, especially which is designed for the asynchronous communications only, asynchronous communication, but it supports both synchronous and as well as the asynchronous communications, but especially which is defined for the asynchronous communications, right? Example, what are the messaging products which are available in the market actually? See, there are following enterprise messaging products which are available. Default JMS. In the sense, whenever you install the Weblogic server, by default, which you will get the JMS. And TIBCO messaging service and IBM MQ messaging service. These are all the third-party messaging, enterprise messaging services, and advanced queuing, in the sense AQ messaging system. Understood? Among that, which one we are going to be learning? Default JMS. Whatever you are learning in the default JMS, everything which remains the same with other messaging products also. The only thing is configurations are different. Concept
Okay.
remains quite common. So let's we see what is the example of the JMS generally. See, whenever you withdraw amount from your account, right? So
Yes,
immediately what
sir.
will happen? You will get the message to
You
your
get a
mail ID,
message.
right? You will get the
Yes.
message to your mail, your email ID, and as well as your mobile application, right?
Mm-hmm.
But suppose your mobile switched off, or your email application is also unavailable. Where it stores until you are active? It's in the JMS only.
JMS.
Understood? So
Mm-hmm.
generally, that is what actually that case which require actually. So these application, Java application, which integrate with the mobile operators and sending the messages between the two different companies or two different applications. Understood?
Okay.
So this is about example of the JMS. So let's see other important interview question. What are the WebLogic server JMS features generally? Point-to-point communication and publish to subscriber JMS models. It supports both. And see how you can come to know whether the message is delivered or not. We don't know, right? So acknowledgement
Yes.
based guarantee delivery of the messaging, and it supports the transactional message deliveries and durable subscribers and distributed destinations and recovery from the failed services. These are all the features which are supported by the WebLogic Server JMS. Important interview question. What are the features which support by the WebLogic Server JMS? Then after that, let's we see the architecture of the JMS. See, I'm asking some question to you people. Whenever you want to send mail to the anybody, what are the things required?
I mean, through mobile or
Anyone to send and receive the message. What are the things required actually? It requires the connection, right?
just
First,
yes, connection,
and the second one,
application.
session. You need to be logged into the Gmail, right? You are going to be creating the session.
Okay. Yes.
Third, which requires the destinations, right? In the sense,
Mm-hmm.
internally, whenever you are
Technical.
sending SMTP or IMAP, these are the protocols which needs to be used to send and receive the messages, right?
Yes, sir.
Similarly, even in WebLogic also, so which requires these three things: connection, session, and destination. But destinations are quite different here. Queue, comma, topic. These are the destinations to send and receive the messages. Alright? So that is about here. Just go to here. This is what architecture of the JMS. This is client 1 or application 1 and application 2. Whenever application 1 wants to send messages to the application 2, the application 1 generally which writes the messages, then connection factory which is associated with the JND tree, it has going to be enabled the connection and which forwarded to the JMS server. Okay? WebLogic
Okay.
server, JMS server, which has the ability to send and receive the messages. If the other
Okay.
application is available, this client too, normally it has going to be delivered the messages. If it is not available, so based on the client register ID, those messages which are going to be associated with the persistent store. So under this,
Okay.
it has going to be stores. Whenever this application comes into the active or come into the online, and these messages are which are going to be redelivered based on the client register ID, and once it is received, it has going to send the acknowledgement to the destinations
Okay.
and destinations which are going to delete those messages. Understood? Vice versa
Okay.
again, even from the application tool to also you can able to do same thing. Vice versa. So this is about
Until how long?
architecture. What?
Until how long does it store? I mean, is there any specific time?
No, it will store. This is persistent store where it is going to store under the database
Okay.
until
If
until we are
the
going to be we need to be delete those messages are going to be available.
okay.
Right.
I mean, if the applicant, the receiver is not available for 10 to 15 days, we don't get messages in mobile, right?
You won't
The
get.
mobile is
See, you have withdrawn amount from your account. Your mobile is not
okay.
available with you. Right?
Okay.
What will happen? The application will store those messages whenever your mobile is switched on, and it is going to be sent. After some point, what will happen? Messages are going to be moved to the garbage
Okay.
to 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 clean up the to clean up whenever you are cleaning up, right?
Okay, sir.
Let's we see here who are going to be producing the messages, how the communication happen in between the two applications. This is application 1 and application 2. So how the message produce, what is the message producer? Sorry. Message consumer. Message producer who are going to be sending the messages. Message receivers who are receiving the messages. Let us say take some example. You are using the Airtel or some network, right? In your mobile.
Yes.
Some SIM. Generally, how do you get some offers without knowing it? Automatically with receivers, right?
Yes.
Messages. So how do you get generally? So they are going to be sending right messages through this some messaging product. They
Mm-hmm.
are integrating with the messaging product, and they are going to be sending the messages to your mail ID or your mobile. And
Yes.
application, who are the in that case, who are the message producers? Airtel people. If you take the example, Airtel. Consumers, all the customers who are having the SIM network. Understood?
Yes.
Right. So flow of the connection, how the connection is going to be created before it's sending actually. Let's we see here. I told you. So to send and receiving the messages, which requires the three things actually: connection, session, and destination. See, whenever the application looks, it has going to be look up the connection actually. Connection factory, which is going to be stored under the JNDA tree. This JNDA tree which returns the connection, and connection it has going to be creating. Then after that creating the sessions. Connection is ready, session is ready, and which requires the destinations actually. By using these destinations, again you need to be go to the JNDA tree, and here you can able to find out destinations like through the destinations, client, connection, session, destinations. Three are ready. You can send the messages through these destinations to the other application. If other
Mm-hmm.
application is unavailable, it is associated with the persistent store, and in that it has going to store all the messages based on the client register ID. Understood?
Okay.
So, and JMS generally which is going to be supports the transacted messages also. In the sense, whenever the user wants to send any transaction, it has going to be sends the transaction one, and if the transaction and other consumables which is available, which deliver the transactions normally. If it is not available, which is going to be stored. So whenever it is available, it forwards again. In this way, it has going to be supports the transactions also. Let's we see
Okay.
important interview question. What are the administrative tasks? JMS administrative tasks. Creating and monitoring the JMS server and creating the connection factories, creating and monitoring the destinations, creating the JMS stores, creating the paging thresholds and quotas, creating the durable subscriptions, managing the JMS server failures. All these are the administrative tasks regarding the JMS. Let's we see what is the destination first. A destination is nothing but it is a lightweight object, so which is going to be stored in the JNDA tree. It is as the ability to sending and receiving the messages. And there are two types of destinations which are available: queue, topic. Let's we see what are the types of JMS asynchronous communication models. There are two types actually. First one, point to point communication. There is only one application can receive the message, right? That can be receive the messages at the same time. Example,
Yes.
whenever you withdraw amount, you will get the mail ID. You will get the alert either to your mail ID or to your mobile application. Only one application can receive. Understood?
Yes.
So that point-to-point communication, which is implemented by using the queue. And what is the architecture of the queue generally? See, this is what client. So whenever the client writes the message, which is going to be forwarded by using the queue. So if the client 2 or application 2 which is available, normally those messages are going to be consumed, and it has going to be sent acknowledgement to the queue. And those messages which are going to be deleted from the queue. Understood?
Okay.
only single consumer can receive the same message at the same time. And what is publish to subscriber communication model? More than one application can receive the same message body or same message, right? After
Mhm.
withdraw amount from your account, you will receive to your mail ID and as well as your mobile application at same time. So which is implemented by using the topic. Let's we see what is the
Okay.
architecture of the topic. This is what actually client, whenever they want to publish the messages, they can publish more than one application at the same time. And once it is received those messages by the applications, which returns the acknowledgement to the topic which deletes the messages from it. And if application is not available, it stores in the persistent store. Clear, right? Say how you can implement in the WebLogic server generally. Let's we see what is the terminology, JMS terminology. What is the JMS server generally? JMS server, these are the environment related configuration resources that act like as a management containers for JMS queue and the topics destinations. So generally, by using the JMS server, you can send and as well as receive the distributed messages. Let's we see what is this is architecture of the JMS server. Here we have the JMS clients, there you have the JMS clients. In middle you may have the JMS server. So you can send the messages by using the JMS server to the other client. If the other client is unavailable, generally what will happen, which is persistent, which is associated with the persistent store and stores into the persistent store. And whenever available, which forwards again to the client to that client. This is about the JMS server. How you are able to configuring the JMS server. Let's we see. Log into the admin console. Click on lock and edit button. Expand the services node. Expand the messaging node. Click on the message JMS server. So click on new. Provide the. Select this. Provide the WLS demo JMS server. Click on next. Select the target and click on finish button. So I configure the JMS server. Next, what is the JMS module generally? See, a JMS system resources generally which are configured and stored modules similarly to the J2W modules. Like that, where are your file, how you are going to be deploying. Similarly, like that, you can deploy the which is already deployed, configured those JMS modules. What are those JMS resources actually? Such as queue, topic, connection factory, quota, distributed queue, distributed topic. All these are called JMS module resources, which is already pre-configured. By enabling those options, we can able to configure just like as J2W standard modules. Important interview question: what are the JMS server resources? Very, very, very important interview question. Connection factory, a queue, topic, distributed queue, distributed topic, and as well as foreign server and quota. All those are called WebLogic server JMS resources. Just hang on 1 second. Hello. Yes. 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 Yeah. Tell me. Yes. I got the amount. Okay. Sunday. You told me right on Sunday. Sir. Okay. Okay. I'll do it. 9 9 from 9 to I'll take. Right. Right. Okay. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Right. So these are the JMS server resources. Let's how you can able to configure the JMS module. So let's go to over there. So in WebLogic server 8 point previous versions there was no JMS module. Everything which is stored under the JMS server only. So I'm just clicking on the JMS module. Click on new. Provide the JMS module. Click on next. Click on next. Select the target and click on next and click on finish button. Next. So next, what is the connection factory? So connection factory generally, what is the connection factory? Connection factory is nothing but generally which defines the some set of connections, already some set of connection configuration parameters. Generally those connection, those predefined connections which are used to the JMS clients, those set of predefined connections by using the connection factory, which we can able to create connections for the JMS clients. And what is the queue and what is the topic? So queue is nothing but which defines the point-to-point destination type and which are used for the asynchronous peer communication. Second one, topic, which defines the topic, which defines the publish to subscriber communication model, which are used for asynchronous peer communication. So let's we see how you can able to configure the connection factory, queue and topic. Go to over there. See, click on the JMS module, click on the created JMS module. So click on new. See, all these are called JMS resources, right? Which are already there. Select the connection factory, click on next, provide the connection factory name, demo CF, click on next and click on finish button and click on new, select the queue, click on next, provide the queue name, click on next. I need to be provide the JD name here. Click on next and click on finish button and click on new, select the topic. So click on next, WLS demo T, JNDA slash WLS demo T. So click on next and click on finish button. So in this way, we can able to configure the queue topic connection factory. In the sense, so we have configured connection, which means we created the connection factory, session and as well as the destinations. Now we are ready for sending and receiving the messages, between the two or more enterprise applications. Understood? So this is what general configuration. So the advanced configuration regarding the JMS server we'll see tomorrow. Any doubts? I'm just stopping here today. So regarding remaining the JMS, we'll see tomorrow. Any doubts?
No, sir.
Are you doing the practicals? Are you people doing the practicals?
No.
Or, hello?
Yes.
Are you people doing the practical or not?
Yes, sir. Practically.
Yeah. Do it, and I will upload the videos. I couldn't find the time actually. Once I will find the time, I will upload the videos also. Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right. So tomorrow we'll meet around 6:40, 6:50 around like that. Okay. 15 minutes delay like that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
So thank you. Bye.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, sir.